Welcome to Bunch Formation, your new favorite college football show. I am Chris Vannini, and I have to give credit to the conglomerate.
I am David Ubben, and I am losing faith in the team talent composite. And also, I am in a car.
Folks, we are going live. If you're listening to us live on YouTube or Twitter, we are live to talk about all of the quarterfinal games. We're going live at the moment right after Ole Miss stunned Georgia 37-34, an unbelievable game that capped off what was otherwise a pretty not so great day of football. We're going to get into all the games, but first, David, yes, you're in your car, you're doing a delayed Christmas, right? And in order to not wake anybody up in where you are staying, that's why you are where you are, for those of you who are watching.
Yeah, we're hopefully our internet can hang on. But yeah, visiting some family, and it's a full house, and we got sleeping people. So listen, we're gonna talk quarterfinals. We got a lot to chat about. And I am in the passenger seat of a car in the driveway. This has got to be near the top of the list of the funniest places I've recorded a podcast, Chris. So yeah.
Well, and look, we had said going into Georgia, Ole Miss, you and I both had to write a couple things for The Athletic. And we're like, all right, if this is a blowout, we'll be good to go. The second is live. And of course, no, it wasn't. Of course, we got maybe the greatest college football playoff game we've ever had, potentially. That was unbelievable. Just to start there, just real quick, like, holy crap, man. Ole Miss did it with Pete Golding, without Lane Kiffin there. Unbelievable, man. That game was nuts. Like, we had two blowouts earlier on Thursday. The Miami Ohio State game that I was at was a fun game, competitive game, but I'm just sitting here. We're watching Ole Miss, like the confetti's falling. I cannot believe this. This is unbelievable.
Well, it's interesting to me. It was such a gut check game in so many different ways. Like, you give up the defensive score, you're down 9.5. It felt like you're gonna need something, maybe not special, but your margin of error looked really small in the second half. You rally, you take control of the game, then you give up the score. The fluky non-face mask call happens.
Man,
Your Georgia's driving back down. You get the stop, and then you get the clutch third down completion. That was like so many different gut check moments for Ole Miss in that game, for them to answer each of them and be moving on, deny the Carson Beck Georgia reunion,
Yep.
and certainly right now Ole Miss winning the Lane Kiffin breakup. So shout out to the Rebs.
Yeah. If you haven't checked out the show notes, we'll have timestamps in there. If you are listening to this not live, please send all your feedback and emails to bunchformationpod@gmail.com. Please leave a 5-star rating and review. We read them on the show. If you're watching this video now, live or later, please leave a like. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. It really helps us. This has been a really fun season doing this, and it really means a lot. If you are watching live on YouTube or on Twitter, please leave us questions. We will get into the comments as we are going, and we're going to start there. Georgia 37. I'm sorry, Ole Miss 37, Georgia 34.
39, Chris. 39.
Oh, is the game over yet? I'm actually not sure if
no,
the game
officials
is over
actually.
yet.
The officials are personally disassembling the championship stage. They've actually taken the trophy out of the hands. They're saying, no, we're gonna review that last one to see if any of those pitches were illegal.
So this game, Ole Miss takes a 6-0 lead early on with two 55-yard field goals. That kicker, Lucas Canero, was unbelievable.
Yeah.
But then Georgia starts to come back. They're up 21-12. They get the scoop and score after Kwan Lacey fumbles. That was the moment where we're like, oh, that's like the one thing you can't do, Ole Miss. They mess up the end of the first half when the guy doesn't go out of bounds, and then they don't know if they're kicking a field goal right away or spiking it. They miss that opportunity. Disaster class. That's the moment where you're like, oh, this is a team that doesn't have an actual kind of real head coach at the moment, because Lane Kiffin is in Baton Rouge with Kim Mulkey. But no, Ole Miss comes back in that third quarter. Big time response.
Yeah.
And they come back to take the lead. Trinidad Chambliss, like Johnny Football, but like unbelievable throws. This guy was at Division II Ferris State last year, and he's making NFL throws against Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. And then Kirby Smart makes a bizarre fourth down decision, doesn't punt, does this thing. He'd already done the fake punt earlier. That blows up, doesn't work. Georgia rallies to tie it up, and Ole Miss kicks the field goal to win. Where do you want to start with this game? I mean, we could start anywhere.
I mean, I think you have to sort of give a hand to Ole Miss. Certainly this was a team that, they've avenged their only loss of the season. They've had a weird year. Coming in, all the talk was about Austin Simmons and running back this season from a year ago, where they lost a lot of their best players on the line. But obviously investing, still portaling hard. The Lane Kiffin stuff you kind of know is happening all season long. The LSU Florida sweepstakes. For all the things that have worked against this team, this is a less talented team than last year. This is a less physical team than last year. But they've gotten further, and they've done that by being consistent and answering the call. They didn't have a stupid loss to Kentucky that knocked them out of the playoffs. They've gone toe-to-toe with the big teams. They were up 9 against Georgia. I think that game was in Oxford. You'll excuse me if I don't remember.
No, I think it was
they've gone toe-to-toe with all these teams.
Athens,
and so for them to get past this and look like, we got a Final Four here where all 4 teams, I think, can win the national championship. But for Ole Miss to validate their season, their program, everything about Ole Miss moving forward, they didn't have to win this game to do that, but to win it, I think you have to feel pretty unbelievable about the status of things moving forward. And to do that while Lane Kiffin is watching women's basketball at LSU and them losing a last-second 3-point shot, I think it's got to be sweets for Ole Miss fans. Like I said, it's a bit like getting dumped by your girlfriend and then winning the lottery.
Lane Kiffin does get a $500,000 bonus from LSU, by the way, because they're paying him as if he was still coaching this team, which he is not. But yes, by the way, I didn't mention at the top, we're down to 4 teams: Indiana, Oregon, Ole Miss, Miami. Welcome to the new world of college football, folks. We don't got no Alabama, no Georgia, no Ohio State, no Clemson. If you didn't fully believe yet that we were in a new era of college football, that the top of the sport had been flattened, that more teams can get up and in the mix, here you go, man. And I just got to say off the bat, I don't want to hear a word about what the TV ratings are for the semifinals and finals. I do not care. Do not get into that. These are 4 fascinating teams. I think all 4 of them could win it. All 4 of them would be a fascinating story if they do so. Only Miami has won a national championship in the last 60 years, if at all. And that came 24 years ago. So it's a whole new thing here.
I think the interesting thing about this, I think there's a lot of fans of college football who still don't understand, the page has turned. We're in a new era. I was texting a friend of mine, tonight, and he was like, so is Georgia just going to smack everybody? And I'm like, it's I kind of liked Ole Miss to sort of, they had a chance they certainly had a puncher's chance to win this game, but they didn't look like a touchdown underdog. This was a coin flip game. I mean, the fact that they give up that defensive touchdown in the first half and you're still they can still win this game, and then they obviously do it. I mean, it was kind of a coin flip game, but Ole Miss was the better team in this game. And you look at this, Indiana, I don't think we have to talk about who the better team in that game was. Oregon has been there, but they still haven't climbed the mountaintop. And then obviously it seems like the U is back. We are in a different era, like Georgia, Bama, Clemson, Ohio State, Oklahoma. I don't see those guys anywhere. And it's kind of amazing that we're here. And you can point to, it's not one thing, the expanded playoffs certainly helps some of that. NIL, the portal transfers, all this stuff, the inability to stockpile talent, all these things, teamed up to make this a reality. But I think there's one thing that's clear as we look into the semifinals, and you mentioned it, Chris, is that we are in a new era of college football, and it's a lot more interesting and it's a lot more fun, I think, than watching the sort of death machines of Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and Clemson that we saw for most of the 4-team playoff era.
Yeah, Nikki Flynn, 8537. Imagine telling someone 3 years ago we could potentially have an Indiana Ole Miss college football championship game. I mean, I
Yeah,
think
real quick on this,
any
Chris.
four of
I
these,
tweeted about this. What's the more compelling story? Because I feel like those would be two of the
man.
best stories in college football history. You have Indiana, which is like beyond rags to riches. Doesn't even. It's basically from like death to Superman. Like I don't even know.
Home field apparel went with rags to roses on their gear. That was pretty well done.
Yeah, I that doesn't even really do it justice. And then Ole Miss was like just fine, but then to be dumped by your coach, who, you know, a lot of college football fans do not like Lane Kiffin. I think a lot of those reasons are probably justified. But like, for them to leave, and he left because he didn't think he could win a national championship, and for that team, if they're able to actually do it, I mean, it's like the you know, we called the Indiana Alabama game the narrative Super Bowl, but like I think I said it was like Harry Potter versus Lord of the Rings. Like I don't think we've seen two competing stories in college football that are that compelling as Indiana and Ole Miss right now.
But you've also got Oregon, which has never won a national championship.
Yes.
Like they've been a good team, but they're not a blue blood power. They are trying to get there. And then you have Miami.
You have your best friend, Chris, in Michael Irvin, living his best life. We're gonna see a lot more of him.
We'll get into him. We'll get into Miami and all that. And then you have Miami, though, which is like a great team from our childhood that's kind of been nothing for 20 years. And like, are they finally back and all that? Like, all of these stories are fascinating. I put a Twitter poll on this. Will Lane Kiffin take LSU to a semifinal at some point in his time there?
Yeah.
Like, how confident do you feel about that?
7.5 out of 10.
I say that because Lane Kiffin, as much as he tried to play the victim in all the calendar stuff and wanting to coach the team stuff, it ignored the central problem with this, which was he was leaving a team that could win the national championship. And as we've seen tonight, this team is good enough to do that. This wasn't John Summerall and Bob Chesney leaving for life-changing money, moving up a level and all that. He was leaving a spot where there is no guarantee that he will get back to. Yes, LSU's maybe the best job in the country, resources, all that kind of stuff. But like we just said it, Alabama and Georgia aren't here anymore. Ohio State didn't make it. It's hard to do this in this era of college football now. So that's just like, as far as this Ole Miss team goes, that is now the bar that Lane Kiffin has to get to and get to right away. Wait, you left Ole Miss to go to LSU and you didn't even get as far as Ole Miss did. And that's go back to what you said about winning the divorce and all that stuff. So we're not going to talk much more about Lane Kiffin. But credit to Pete Golding for the adjustments they made in the second half there. This team, that defense was swarming tonight. I know they gave up 34, well, not even 34 points because there was a defensive score in there. That Ole Miss defense was playing hard. How many TFLs did they have? How many times did a running back try to go to the outside and he get tackled by 4 guys? Like that Ole Miss team played hard and kept them in that game when it was 21-12 and Georgia started the second half of the ball. Major shout out to that Ole Miss defense.
We saw some hitting today, man. I think Georgia Ole Miss was probably the most physical game. But you know, Indiana was bringing some booms, but man, just like I enjoyed watching the football this weekend. We had 4 games that were compelling in their own way. There wasn't a lot of like kind of blah in the quarterfinals.
Well, we didn't think they were going to be blowouts, even though 2 of them were.
Yes, I think that's true. So anyway, I mean, I've enjoyed watching it. What do we want to hit on here, Chris?
Well, did you have so we talked about the Ole Miss defense. Wanted to make sure we give them their flowers. Trinidad Chambliss, man, like he finished in the top 10 of the Heisman. It's crazy that this guy was at Division II last year, and he realized in that second half he was not going to have a lot of time for protection, but he knew he had enough ability to get away from Georgia's defensive linemen. Like he didn't panic and just throw the ball out of bounds, which maybe would have been the smart thing to do. But you could tell there was a couple of plays in a row. He realized, oh, this Georgia defensive front is tired. they can't keep up with me. I'm going to keep this play alive because we can potentially make something out of it. And like the plays he was making, Sean McDonough on the call, like the perfect guy for that moment, man. He is, I think he's the best play-by-play guy in college football. And he was named the uh, NSMA National Sportscaster of the Year today. He was informed that he got that. So that was awesome.
Trinidad Chambliss, by the way, in the second half, 13 of 16, 202 yards, 1 touchdown. It felt that I thought it was even better than that, just having watched it. And also, this is a Georgia defense that we talk about this heading into the preview, Chris. They hit their stride like down the stretch. Early in the season, this was a defense that could be gotten. There wasn't a lot of getting going on. And, say what you will about Alabama, but like go look at what Georgia's defense did to that team in the SEC championship and go look at what Trinidad Chambliss did to them tonight. And like, man, just impressive stuff. And I mean, Ole Miss moved the ball all night. They didn't really hit a lot of dry spots. I mean, they didn't score on every drive, but they were moving the ball consistently all game, and that's hard to do against this team.
Georgia was my pick to win it all. Like they were playing as well as anybody outside of Indiana to close the season. I did not see that coming, and especially of all the 4 games, Ohio State Miami was the biggest point spread. This was the one that I thought that was most likely to be a blowout potential.
Yeah, I thought it could be. I thought Ole Miss had a puncher's chance, but I thought it could get away from Ole Miss in a hurry.
Because like Tulane moved the ball on them with ease. They just couldn't finish drives. This Ole Miss defense, again, just simply played better. To hold them to the field goal, by the way. So in that fourth quarter, after it's a 3-point game, Ole Miss has the ball. The face mask isn't called. I don't know how you missed that. That is like as plain a day as face mask as you can have.
I don't know. And it wasn't even like an extended grab. When you get the head turn where it's
whole body.
It's a very unnatural movement. Like you don't have to actually see the face mask grasp to see like, oh, that was weird. And also, I don't know why that's not reviewable. Like, especially something that's like not really a judgment call or subjective. It feels like that should be something that's reviewable. A massive miss, and I don't know how they missed that.
And so, that happens. And then George is driving. You have the PI, the pass interference. First one, I didn't love the call. Second one, definite call. But they hold him to a field goal. That was it right there. Like you felt like, what, a minute left here. George is going to get the touchdown, and we're just going to have to hear about the face mask, and Ole Miss got screwed. Like our buddy Antonio Morales, who's covered Ole Miss, was just like, he was waiting because he thought the heartbreak was going to come. I think everybody associated with Ole Miss thought it was going to come. But the defense gets that stand, and that allows them, Ole Miss, to make the, and it was what? So Ole Miss gets the ball, and they run it on first down and pick up like 5 yards. And I actually thought that was a good call, because I think you wanted to see if Kirby Smart was going to use his timeouts or not.
Yeah.
And when he didn't, that allowed Ole Miss to like use some clock, but not enough that they would run out of time. It was
it's not a throwaway either. Like that was legitimately a surprising call, and you have enough clock to play with where you're not like putting yourself in like, oh gosh, we got to go mode. Like you get a gain. There's a world in which they pop that for 15 yards. They got Kejuan Lace running the ball. Like you're not handing it all. You're not calling a quarterback draw there. So,
but also like you're able to run some clock. Whereas if you don't pick up that third down, Georgia's got 25 less seconds than if it would have otherwise. And instead, and then on third down, they see the single coverage. Chambliss just throws it up there. Guy makes a great catch, and suddenly you're in field goal range.
Speaking of game management, Chris, how did you feel about how Georgia handled the goal to go sequence? I did not like throwing it on third down there. So you've got Ole Miss has no timeouts. You've got 3 timeouts. There's
good timeout. By the way, good timeout usage by Pete Golding there on first and second down.
Yes. But Georgia's got a minute 4, and it's like third and goal on like the 6. Okay. They just ran a pretty standard pass play. What your percentage of completing that is, what, 60%, something like that. There's a lot of risk there. I would have liked to have seen it. Maybe you don't have to run the ball, but maybe a screen, maybe a jet sweep, something like that. Because what you did is you risked it, And now you've given them a minute is in college football an eternity, for any decent offense. I didn't like that. And if you don't get that touchdown, then you're giving them a minute to go get 3 points, which Ole Miss didn't have to rush. They hit one big pass play, 2 big pass plays to get down there, and then it's not a chip shot, but I mean it's a pretty you probably make that kick, I don't know, 70% of the time with that kicker. So it's I didn't like the just wind up and throw it. I thought you had to have some risk aversion, because if you get a 4-yard gain there, then you got another interesting decision where it's 4th and goal down 3 at the 1.5, 2-yard line, and you can say let's go win the game. I didn't like the calculated risk from Georgia.
I mean, you're going for the win.
But you can still go for the win without just dropping back and trying to throw something in the back of the end zone where they're going to probably drop 7 or 8 guys. I just think that you've got to look at the downside of that, and you can still go for the win.
The problem was they got 2nd and goal at the 3, and their second play gets blown up. You lose 3 yards, and you're back at the 6. That's, again, a credit to the Ole Miss defense for stepping up and making a play. I imagine they thought, hey, we're at the 3-yard line here. We could probably run it twice maybe and get in. And when that 2nd down gets blown up, suddenly you got to make a decision here. I don't have a problem with making sure you're throwing it in the end zone. You're going for the touchdown. Could you do a screen or something? I guess, sure. But I really didn't have much of a problem with that. But think about it. Ole Miss, you give up 7 points on the scoop and score. You have the face mask late that costs you a lot of time in extending the drive. And they still win this game.
Yeah.
Most of the things went against Ole Miss. By the way,
you had a touchdown underdog, give up a defensive score and win. That's I'd like to see how many times that happened literally all season.
I'm watching the highlights here. Man, Gunnar Stockton, not the best game, but that dude took a beating. He took 2 of the biggest hits you'll ever see a quarterback take.
He was on that Haynes King flow tonight. So.
Yeah, he finished 18 for 31, 204 yards, 6.6 yards per throw, also 20 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground.
What is with his instinct that when he's rolling out and there's a rusher bearing down on him, that he generally jumps after throwing it? Because that led to 3 of the most dramatic hits you'll ever see. That one that he took right before the touchdown literally looked like a hit out of NFL Blitz. And I'm just Gunner, protect yourself, but don't be such a gunner,
Was the best quarterback in the SEC this year the guy who was at Ferris State last year? I was thinking about this in terms of the SEC as a whole. You get one team in the semifinals for the 2nd year in a row. They had none last year. Sorry, they had none last year. I guess it's Diego Pavia, but the SEC as a whole, deep conference, a lot of good teams. It doesn't have great teams anymore, and we are seeing that in this playoff era. The Big Ten has won the last 2 national championships. They're guaranteed to have another team in the championship this year. The only team left for the SEC is a team that finished 3rd or 4th in it and has the Ferris State guy at quarterback, because the guy that won the SEC was Gunnar Stockton. And I think you've seen the SEC just does not have the elite NFL quarterback play. And we're kind of getting back to a spot where you sort of need that, or at least you need it to be solid. The best quarterbacks in the league were the guy who played at Ferris State last year and the guy who began his career at New Mexico Military. This isn't Dante Moore. This isn't Fernando Mendoza winning the Heisman. This isn't some of the other guys. Bryce Underwood left LSU, went to Michigan. Julian Sands, a Heisman finalist. So I think at the SEC as a whole, you're seeing that all that depth that those top teams were able to build up is not there anymore. And the talent is being spread around to so many other SEC teams like an Ole Miss, where you're not going to have the Alabama, Georgia runs anymore. You're just not, where you're winning 3 national championships in 5 years. There's too much change year to year. You can't stock those guys anymore. It's just, I don't know. It's an interesting situation there in terms of where the SEC is at, because you got 5 teams in the field. You got 1 in the semifinal.
Yeah. I think one thing that you talk about the year-to-year change, and I think what that does is, and I'm not really sure why it seems like we see this more from the teams that have elite talent. We saw it from Alabama this year. We saw it from Georgia this year. We saw it from Ohio State this year. Is it teams their performance varied wildly from week to week, like more than we've seen. And Indiana outside of Penn State seemed like the only team that we haven't really seen that. Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss has probably been. I'm trying to think.
They played with their food. The Florida game was close. Washington State game was close. Like there
That's
were
true. The
people.
Washington State game, that was the one that was really embarrassing. I was trying to think exactly, but it feels like we've seen a lot more week to week variance in a sport that we already see a ton of that. And I think that's been an interesting development that I don't think that I would have foreseen when you have so much roster variance that the week to week performance variance, pops up as well.
Yeah. So Ole Miss beats Georgia. Anything else you want to say on this game?
No, I think I'm really happy for Ole Miss fans. Like,
yes,
everybody
is. Like we said, I said coming into the playoff, like, are they America's team? And I think at this point, if they might be, if it's not Indiana and it's adorable quarterback. Oh, did we lose Dave? I think we might have lost David. I think you're frozen there.
I'm back.
All right.
We're back.
All right, you're good. You're good. Yeah. Is Ole Miss America's team?
Yeah, probably just because a lot of people really hate Lane Kiffin. like Indiana, I think people like the story, and I think that Fernando Mendoza is our earnest king. But I think that the combination of getting dumped by a coach that, like, a lot of people, I mean, if you were ranking the most disliked college football coaches, like, Brian Kelly is probably number one, like, just by the average, like the average college football fan on the street. Like, Brian Kelly was probably number one, and then LSU goes straight to Lane Kiffin, who I haven't really thought this ranking through, but he's definitely top 5.
Nope, we lost you again. You think he's top 5? Another coach who's actually maybe up there at least growing in terms of the haters, it's actually Curt Cignetti. Let's get into the Rose Bowl. Indiana 38, Alabama 3. Indiana went 3 and out on the first drive, and that was about the only thing that went wrong the whole day. Fernando Mendoza, 14 for 16, 192 yards, 3 touchdowns. Yes, more touchdown passes than incompletions. Black had 99 rushing yards, 6.5 yards per carry. Hemby had a touchdown. Backer, Surratt, and Cooper all caught the touchdowns. It was just a fundamental beatdown. Indiana was better than Alabama in every aspect of the game. And once after that first drive happened, that was it. Indiana's offensive line was better. The defensive line was better. The receivers, the quarterback, all of these things. Alabama with like 50 something 4 and 5-star recruits on their roster, while Indiana had 7. And Indiana was just better across the board. Where do you want to start with this one?
I think that it was really glaring watching that first half, the first quarter or so, and even when the game was still in doubt, everything looked hard for Alabama, and everything looked pretty easy for Indiana.
Easy. Indiana,
like you're getting push up front. Your back's not getting touched until he's 4 yards downfield. There's lots of creases.
They picked up they had like the 1st and 20 run where the guy picked it up on a run.
And Alabama was having to bring some exotic looks and having to blitz to get to Mendoza. They were having trouble getting to him when they were only rushing 4. And Alabama, I mean, story of the season, couldn't run the ball. And when you couldn't run the ball, if you're one-dimensional against an elite team, what do you think's going to happen? And Alabama lived that out today. One of the saddest field goals you'll ever see.
So, like, it was the definition of a sad field goal because it turned a 24-0 game into a 24-3 game. It turned a 3-touchdown game into a 3-touchdown game late in the third quarter when you were not possibly going to have three more possessions even left in that game. But on that first drive, Alabama blitzes twice. They get to Fernando Mendoza, sack him twice. And you're like, Woo, interesting. And then you know what Indiana did? They adjusted because that's what good coaches do. And they had the running back in there to pick up blitzes in the future. They ran a lot more RPOs on the next few drives to get the ball out quickly if they needed to. And when it was a straight passing play, Mendoza had a 7-step drop. So he had plenty of time to make a decision. And once Indiana made that adjustment, Alabama had nothing left because they couldn't rush the passer this year. They couldn't run the ball this year, 125th in the country in rushing. And Ty Simpson played great in the first half of the season, but not a guy you could put the whole team on. And he fumbles in that game, took a big hit. I think it was in the first half. Eventually gets benched.
They said he fractured his rib, so
yeah, bench / injury pulled because it was clear it was not the same. Austin Mack came in and gave him a spark for like a minute there, but not much else. And
I gotta say,
they were just trying to keep it close. They were trying to keep not getting shut out.
One of my biggest takeaways from the game, by the way, a little weird we didn't see Keelan Russell there. Just saying, I would have liked to have seen a little bit of him. Anyway, we joked about it coming in that like Saban doesn't like the lack of physicality that he sees when he watches Alabama.
Yep.
That's troubling. When you look at the recruiting, you look at the results, Kalen DeBoer is doing fine at Alabama. Like, I know the crazy Alabama fans in your life that, every loss is an existential crisis wouldn't say that. But, like, they're still in the mix. Like, they got to Atlanta in year 2. He's got, like, the number 2 recruiting class. But, man, the lack of physicality on the line of scrimmage, it's happened really, really fast. And that is a gigantic red flag for the future of Alabama under Kalen DeBoer. And I don't, I'm trying to think back. It's hard to really compare. But, you look at the Washington team, they got bullied by Michigan in the national championship game. But it's easy to kind of just be like, well, that Michigan team kind of bullied everyone. But I don't know when I look back at even the Fresno teams and Washington had a really good pass blocking offensive line. I think they won the Joe Moore Award the year that they went to
that sounds right,
if I'm not mistaken. But they weren't really road graders. And like I wonder if it's possible to be an elite SEC team if you cannot run the ball consistently. And Kalen DeBoer's programs have never been run first. And like, I think we can respect what Indiana has done. And I don't think that what we saw from Alabama today devalues Indiana at all. But to watch Alabama get on a stage like this and just look completely incapable of competing with a team that has a lot more talent than, because they couldn't hold up on the lines of scrimmage, was like jarring to see. Because it was on every single play, and you're like, what has happened to Alabama? And it's hard because, like I said, the results have been okay. Like, I know Kalen DeBoer hasn't matched up with crazy expectations.
He's beaten Georgia twice.
But that, man, it's just the loss of the lack of physicality, because that was always the hallmark of Nick Saban's teams. Is, man, like, they always talk about Bama beating you twice because they were so physical on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And Bama has dudes. Like, you look at Caden Proctor, you look at LT Overton, you look at Tim Keener. Like, they got guys. They should be more physical than this, and they're not. And, man, like, more than the results, more than anything else, when I look at the future of Alabama, that gives me a lot of pause.
Yeah, and I don't want to compare DeBoer to Saban. Like, it's because
you have to.
Here's why. No, it's a completely different world than what Saban left. Saban saw this coming, and it's partly why he got out, because he saw teams were spending a lot more than Alabama was on players, and he wasn't going to be able to sign all those 5-stars. They were going to sit there for 2 years on the bench and then be ready to play. And that is the world that Kalen DeBoer has taken over. Yeah. So it's a little bit different in that sense, but there are games where you see that toughness from Alabama. The second half against Oklahoma, the win at Georgia earlier this year, like, it can be there, but why are you not getting it week in and week out? What is it about the culture you're building there that you can't get everybody up for every game, and you go lose to Oklahoma the way you did last year, and you can't take care. You can barely put away an Auburn team this year where you had a big lead. It's not there consistently. We're what is it? We're 2 years into the DeBoer era now.
Yeah.
What is the identity of this team? I have no idea.
Well, they haven't. I mean, I'd be curious. Ty Simpson is good. I don't think he ever got to the heights that you'd like to have him. He certainly was a better fit for what they want to do than Jalen Milroe. But I still keep coming back to
if Simpson couldn't, 3-5 step drop, look, boom, it's there, got it. Like if he's in that rhythm, you're good. But when it's not there, it falls apart. Well, let's talk about. Is there anything more on Alabama? Because I do want to talk about the team that actually won the game, Indiana.
Well, I just think Indiana,
Oh, you're frozen again, real quick. Indiana, here's the thing that jumps out to me about Indiana. They are the most fundamentally sound football team that I have seen in years. Like Indiana, number 1 in turnover margin, number 1 in third down, the third fewest penalties in the country, and unbelievable tackling.
yes,
that is not a talent thing. That is a focused on just doing what you need to do type of thing. And that is why a team full of James Madison transfers and other guys can come and do what they've done over 2 years, but especially this year. And then you add, a Pat Coogan at center. You add a couple elite players. You add a Fernando Mendoza from Cal, and that takes you to that other level. Like, how many yards after catch did Alabama have in this game? I don't even know.
Not
Every
much.
single time Indiana got a hand on you, you were down. And Bryant Haynes needs to be talked about more as one of the best assistant coaches in college football. He's the defensive coordinator there. Bruce Feldman, our colleague, wrote a great story going into this game about the Indiana defense and just how much they disguise things and surprise opposing offenses on what they're going to do. And that's why they've been so good. This team shut down the Ohio State offense in that Big Ten championship game. And now they just gave Alabama one of the worst losses it's ever had. Like they do everything that you're just supposed to do without having to be extraordinary. And by doing that, they become extraordinary.
One thing I think is concerning. Well, I don't know about concerning, but was how predictable this was. Like, it's jarring for people because if you don't watch college football, you see Indiana and Alabama, and you're like, oh, well, this could get ugly. And you're like, yeah, it might.
Feinbaum, yeah.
Yeah, but my brother asked what I thought was going to happen. I was like, I kind of think Alabama's about to get smacked because we've watched Alabama all year.
Yeah,
they haven't been a great team. They have just not been great. And Indiana has been. There's a reason why they haven't lost. They've beaten the heck out of some really good teams. I didn't think it would quite get this bad where Alabama was struggling to move the ball consistently. But the fact that they got beat this bad and we're not how could this happen? This is crazy. It's no, we got an A- game from Indiana and a C+ game from Bama. This is what's going to happen.
Yeah. And I Feinbaum had posted something about a lot of the callers who didn't seem too concerned. Clay Travis said Alabama was going to win. Josh Pate said Alabama was going to win. And that's not to say, hey, anybody who picks a game wrong is wrong. But we picked Indiana. We picked Indiana to win and cover. Mm-hmm. We did say there's a little part of you that wonders, does all that 5-star talent just appear? Can you get the most out of it? Kalen DeBoer in a big game is usually good. But Indiana this game was never close. This game was never competitive.
Well, if you're getting beat that bad on the line of scrimmage, you're never going to win those games ever.
Alabama did not look like it deserved to be on the same field as the Indiana football Hoosiers.
Even the Sun, the famed Sun at the Rose Bowl, couldn't watch that first half, Chris.
So let's talk about the weather real quick. It was pouring there, and for a while leading into the game, I saw all the mud in the parking lot. Saw all the squeegees during pregame to get the water off the field. I gotta say, the field seemed to be great. I didn't see guys
it really affected the game. I thought they did a good job.
Yeah, they didn't put the bands on the field. They did what they everything they could. I didn't think the weather impacted the game at all.
I didn't think so. No.
So that was nice. And yeah, the sunset, we never got the sunset.
Oh.
They moved the game up an hour to accommodate the Sugar Bowl this year because typically the Rose Bowl's been going late and then the Sugar Bowl, doesn't end until after midnight. So the Rose Bowl agreed. And the thought was that means we're not going to get the sunset until like fourth quarter, like late in the fourth quarter, perhaps. Instead, this game went so fast that they're lifting the trophy and it's still daylight out. I didn't see it was cloudy, but we never even got to a point where the sun was going to go down anyway. All of these games, by the way, a very brisk quarterfinal round. I don't have the game time on the Sugar Bowl, but the first 3 games, all under 3.5 hours. Like they just
it helps not having a lot of points. I mean, I don't know what the final time was. I mean, the Sugar Bowl was the only one that kind of got out of hand. I think a combination of teams that are motivated to drain the clock, not a lot of points, and that's kind of what you get. Whereas, the second half of this game was just, Georgia and Ole Miss going back and forth. So
my theory, I may want to do a story on. I may want to look into this in the offseason. Like the way football is being played is different now in college football than it was previous years. Like look up the leading passers, look up the leading rushers. There just isn't as much offense anymore. And it's not just because they changed the clock that took a couple of plays off. Defenses have gotten better. Offenses are less explosive. And so you're not getting games in the 40s all the time and all these stoppages and all this stuff. And the other thing, very few penalties in all of these quarterfinal games. And very few reviews. That has kept things moving along. And then, yes, when it's a blowout, then you kind of start running the clock as well. But Indiana, man, like they're the new betting favorite to win it all. I think it was kind of disrespectful that they weren't coming into the playoff and that it was still Ohio State. But man,
well, I mean, I think it's a combination of talent and that Big Ten title game was a coin flip, so it's whatever.
Anything else on the Rose Bowl?
No, I think as happy as I am just for Ole Miss fans, like Indiana fans still have to be like looking around and like just wondering. I was texting a friend of mine who was at an Indiana bar in Denver, Colorado, and said it was very lit in there. I
cannot even imagine. I know, like I
can't wrap my head around like there's no like equivalent like in sports to just like being an Indiana football fan and then this experience of the last 2 years. Because like I think coming off of last year, I was like, I respect Indiana football, but coming into the year, I was kind of like, it's gonna be tough to kind of sustain that. That was pretty special. For them to go clearly up like several notches is like just unbelievable. And so I'm happy for Indiana fans who have to still feel like they have to be questioning their own reality and wondering if they've entered some sort of fugue state. Whereas like Ole Miss fans, just the sweet, sweet revenge has got to be like just a beautiful thing for them. So I'm happy for the Indiana and Ole Miss fans in my life.
My father-in-law went to Indiana. They had a winless season when he was there. Football wasn't
not
the
only one.
Football wasn't a thing like for them. And to the point where last year he was still kind of rooting for Notre Dame football over Indiana football because it wasn't like real to him because he grew up a Notre Dame football fan because Indiana football is like it wasn't even a thing. And I'm telling him I'm like you got to go to the championship game if they make it. You have to go. He should have gone to the Rose Bowl. Like if your team makes the Rose Bowl, you have to go. It's like it's a lifetime experience, once in a lifetime, depending on who you are. But the other thing about Indiana, by the way, they're not just plucky this and that little guy. Their roster is more than $20 million. They paid up for the players to get Mendoza, to keep some of the players. They don't lose anybody in the transfer portal. Kurt Cignetti.
D'Angelo Pons, who covers so much land. I call him D'Angelo Lakes. Yep.
Kurt Cignetti, who just got a big raise. Now that he's in the semifinal, a clause in that new contract states he has to be a top 3 highest paid coach in the sport. So he's about to get another raise. They're paying their coordinators over $2 million that they're staying there. Like Indiana invested in football at the exact right time. And this is the result. Speaking of other teams that have invested in their football teams, Oregon 23, Texas Tech 0.
Oof.
Rough game. It was 6-0 Oregon at halftime. Although Oregon had 5 trips inside the Texas Tech 36-yard line and 0 points. There were some fourth down stops. There were a couple of field goals. Texas Tech's defense gave them a chance, but they played 50 snaps in that first half. The offense was just terrible. Baron Morton, the quarterback, 18 for 32, 2 interceptions, one of them in the end zone when I think it was 13-0. I think that was like their kind of last chance to kind of make it a game. He also lost a fumble that led to an Oregon touchdown to open the second half. 4 Texas Tech turnovers in total. Dante Moore was really solid, 26 for 33 through a pick. Oregon couldn't run the ball very well, but the star of the game was Brandon Finney Jr., the cornerback. I think he's a freshman. 2 interceptions, fumble recovery. Tech just didn't have it, man. Like the defense, legit. I know the score and all this stuff. You come out of this game saying the Texas Tech defense is legit. They kept that game as close as possible for as long as they could until you eventually start to wear out a little bit.
Yes. And I think, we've been talking about this offense all season long. And I don't want to do revisionist history with Texas Tech because, I think that there is real value in bringing back a quarterback that has as much respect in the locker room and can maintain your culture the way that Baron Morton could and has played through injury and has that respect.
Oh, Dave's frozen again. Yeah, like Baron Morton, local kid from Lubbock. They stuck with him instead of going after some guys in the portal last year. This was on the year, his numbers are pretty good. It was just they were very explosive. This was an offense that struggled when they got in the red zone, but they were kind of boom, not much busting. But he only had, I think, 4 interceptions on the year coming into the game. He has 3 turnovers in this game. The worst possible.
He was solid, but I think you look around, okay, say what you will about Carson Beck. He's played well. Trinidad Chambliss, we saw it tonight. Gunnar Stockton, we saw it tonight. Fernando Mendoza speaks for itself. Dante Moore speaks for itself. They spent all this money on this roster, and you don't upgrade at quarterback. And I do, like I said, I think there's value in keeping your locker room together. But if I'm Brendan Sorsby, who has been linked to Texas Tech, the Cincinnati quarterback, it's sort of a yesterday's price is not today's price sort of situation. If I'm him. And
he's got a lot of people interested in him. Yeah. By the way,
I think it does affect your roster building moving forward. That
yes,
you're gonna probably have to spend on your quarterback because they didn't spend as much on it last year, and I think it caught up to them here. And that's not to say that if they had, somebody else, that it would have been different. But I think maybe their season looks a little bit different. And I know they like Will Hammond, but he's coming off the torn ACL, so
yep.
I do think that this game opened people's eyes, and you saw the Cody Campbell tweet after the game. I mean, I think not that people thought it was going to be a 1-year type sort of situation, but Texas Tech's going to be a factor here, and I'm curious to see where they spend their money moving forward.
Well, with Hammond, when guys started to go in the portal and you started to hear Texas Tech, then some people from Texas Tech would try to tell you no, we're actually not. But the feeling was that they didn't really want to run Hammond off necessarily or scare him off. But also, I think he has a 2-year deal anyway, so I'm not sure exactly
They said he had a 2-year deal. I forget. I don't think they said what the money was, but they said it was a 2-year deal.
But he's coming off the injury too, and I think you see the way this game played out, and it's you can't afford to just hope he's the guy. You have to go find the guy. That is to compete at the highest level of college football now is. If you either have a guy or you have to go find a guy. And there's a lot of good quarterbacks in the portal.
Well, and that's saying I don't think that you can't win without an elite quarterback. But I mean, listen, if you've got a dynamic playmaker, your ceiling raises, your margin of error raises, and there's just no reason to not have that. And I'm bullish, obviously, on Texas Tech's future.
Mm-hmm.
But who I have to think is really concerned is the rest of the Big 12, because as dominant as they looked against BYU, and the rest of the league just didn't really push Texas Tech. For them to get to this stage against an Oregon team that's like good, but also gave up 34 points to James Madison, hasn't looked like a world beater all year.
Nope.
I mean, that game was not that competitive, and it's like
that is
you look around the Big 12, you're like, okay.
That is a third place Big Ten team in Oregon who lost at home to Indiana, barely beat Iowa, barely beat Washington, and Texas Tech didn't look like it should be on the same field as Oregon. At least the offense. The defense did, but the offense, like that game never was really close. Once Morton threw the interception in the end zone, it was like, oh,
Yeah.
that was really kind of going to be your only chance. And if you're like, that's the thing, like with the Big 12, where it's like they haven't had a team make the Final Four in a very long time, like since Oklahoma, I believe, was getting in, and they haven't won a game in the playoff since I don't even
TCU.
know. I'm saying you're right. TCU was there a couple years ago. My bad on that. That's it. It's just like that one. I think that's the one win because Lincoln Riley never won a game. So
yeah, Oklahoma 0-5 all time in the playoff. I was going to mention this earlier on the DeBoer front. Okay. Going down 17-0 at Oklahoma, low key, big time red flag. Anyway, move forward.
It was, but like this is the best the Big 12 had to offer by a mile, and it wasn't close to a 4-year.
This was not. This was the most surprising outcome to me. Because I thought Texas Tech could ugly it up, but like the idea that they just like wouldn't score. Because I mean, like Oregon's good, but I don't think Oregon's that good. We've been on them all year, where it's kind of like, I don't know, like we'll see. And for them to get so thoroughly dominated, like that was not an outcome that I thought we could see. You know, we'll get to the Friday night game. Like I thought Miami could win. I thought Indiana could kill Alabama. I thought Ole Miss had a puncher's chance. But like, if you'd have told me that Oregon beat Texas Tech by 23, I would have a hard time believing.
So let's talk about Oregon though. Didn't run the ball well. 1.4 yards per carry. Nobody averaged more than 3 yards a carry. They were really shut down there. Dante Moore was efficient, not incredible, but efficient enough. And really, part of this came down to just all the drives that Oregon couldn't finish.
Yeah, I mean, this could have been 41-0, honestly.
There were, if you convert some of those fourth downs that they didn't get. I mean, Oregon finished 4 for 8 on fourth down. One of them was like inside the 5-yard line. I remember. Mm-hmm. Like, what do you think of all the aggressiveness in the fourth downs by Dan Lanning?
Well, it's all situational. None of it was reckless. I didn't like a lot of the play calls, but they kept getting in these situations. Like even when they kicked, I think the second field goal, you should have gone for it. But like when you've had all this stuff, you've only got 3 points on the board. It's like, well, we got to get some points on the board. So there wasn't a single situation where I was like, that's a little bit too much. They kept getting these situations where it was like, clearly you got to go for this. And it just adds up. And then when it starts costing you points, but when if you look at it from the 30,000 foot view, then you're like, well, maybe you should kind of reassess some of these things. But every decision in a vacuum was like, probably should go here. Probably should go here. Probably should go here. And sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. The play calls, though, some of the play calls were horrific,
dude, like 4 different teams today in 3 games called a halfback direct snap on a 4th and short.
Yeah, Texas Tech had one that was
Texas Tech did it.
Horrible.
Oregon did it. Alabama did it. And Georgia, Ole Miss did it. Ole Miss did it. None of them worked. Guys, what are you doing? What are these calls?
Run your stuff. Run your stuff. I don't.
Yeah.
Like I listen. When it comes down to these 4th and shorts, okay, and you think the other team's going to sell out against the run, I think you have to have some level of misdirection. But at some point, you've got to just go win at the point of attack. Have maybe some eye candy to maybe take a guy out of the box or whatever. But people are getting too cute with this. Like the Texas Tech play, you give it to your smallest running back. You put Morton in the pistol, and then you like put him out there, and they run this like half-hearted like zone read that is not fooling anybody to Jacoby Williams, and he gets like 2 yards short, loses yard. Like, just like, I don't know what the who is telling people that we need to do stuff that's barely in our playbook on 4th and short? Run like your best run play behind your best offensive lineman, and maybe put a little misdirection on it, or maybe something, give yourself maybe an option. But a lot of overthinking happening on 4th down today.
Anything else on Oregon? You went and saw them in the JMU game. Defense,
I think
great. Defense was a lot better here.
Yeah, well, we said coming out of that game, I said I don't take much away from this defense. They controlled the game when they had to. JMU was running some kind of gimmicky stuff that was working, and it was against some backups. I think that it worked for Dan Lanning because he seems clearly got his defense's attention. To pitch a shutout on a neutral field against a conference champion is really, really
across
impressive.
The country. Yeah.
Yeah, and so not to mention 9 a.m. body clocks game, and they still got the job done.
Yeah.
So really, really impressive. I still have some big picture questions about Oregon. I'm still not all the way sold on them, but when they're playing at that level, they can win the championship, sure.
And they're getting slowly healthier. Like Gary Bryant played and caught a pass here.
Yeah, DeCorey Moore didn't do much today, but yeah.
DeCorey Moore had 3 catches, 21 yards. So they're coming back, and now you got another week to see if they're there. So you've made it this far without being fully healthy. That is what it is. Last thing on this game, the most important thing on this game, Third Eye Blind doing the halftime show.
Yeah, so
that was awesome. You don't like semi-charm?
They're the most meh 90s rock band. It's like it felt like I was in a Kohl's watching the halftime show. me and Kirk Cousins just hanging out over here. Listen, some of these big games, where it's not the Super Bowl halftime show where you can't get the biggest act, and you're trying to get something that appeals to a wide swath of people. I don't envy that because it's really hard to pick. So I feel like Third Eye Blind was a mostly uninspired choice, which is about as good as you can do for a noon bowl game. It wasn't ludicrous at 10 a.m., but Third Eye Blind at 1:30 in Miami it's a close second.
You did go to ludicrous at North Carolina for the football game at 10 a.m., but it very much felt like we are the adults now. We are the olds, the millennials. We are all right. We're just gonna bring some old band acts back for a thing, and that's us.
I will say I did have a friend of mine when I was in high school. His favorite band was Third Eye Blind, and I thought it was the weirdest thing. I was like, "How is that your favorite band?"
Yeah, they're not a favorite band.
I know, it's very weird. I was like, "Okay, man." The idea of Third Eye Blind as your favorite band is one of the weirdest favorite band choices you could possibly make. But hey, to each their own.
The Orange Bowl always does a musical halftime show. Do you remember the most famous one? When Oklahoma and USC, I think it was the Oklahoma USC National Championship game in 04-05, when it was Ashley Simpson.
I have no recollection of this.
The sister of Jessica Simpson, and she got booed like crazy. And then I feel like it was not long after.
Why?
That
was it after the SNL thing?
No, I think it was before, and then I think the SNL.
Why are people booing Ashley Simpson? This is confusing to me.
Because it was the national championship game, and everybody was like, "What is going on?" Third Eye Blind would have killed it if you did that. I don't know.
All I know is that I was on the field at the Orange Bowl to present the Courage Award to Cam McCormick in the third quarter of the Orange Bowl 3 years ago. Killed it. The crowd loved me. I don't know if they even noticed Cam McCormick. I stood there and I think I handed him a plaque or something. But yeah.
Speaking of Cam McCormick, let's move on to the team he used to play for, Miami 24.
Well, it's a long list of teams Cam McCormick used to play for, Chris. You're gonna have to clarify.
Miami 24, Ohio State 14. I was at this game here in Dallas. It was 14-0 Miami at halftime after a 72-yard pick six by Keontae Scott. That was that moment in the press box. We were all like, oh boy. That was whoa. Ohio State's struggling, and now they're down 2 scores. Ohio State had -3 rushing yards at halftime. To Ryan Day's credit, the offense figured things out late in the second.
They shuffled the offensive line quite a bit.
Van Sickle was in there at right guard, got destroyed in the first half. They changed it, put Padilla in there. It gets better. They got 3 or 4 drives going that were solid. They cut it to 17-14 and get the ball back but then there's a holding penalty, blows up a drive. Miami gets it back, goes slowly, methodically down the field, ends with a rushing touchdown that I think Ohio State let him score. And Miami wins. Carson Beck, 19 for 26 passing, 130 yards, 1 touchdown. Not like great numbers, but he's been very efficient. He passed for 7 first downs in this game, and he ran for another. He had the John Elway, run, put your body on the line and pick it up. And like that Carson Beck is good enough to keep you in games. Like my worry coming into this game was, what if Miami can't run the ball? It's on Carson Beck's shoulders, and he throws like 2 picks. You're kind of like waiting for that game. But they threw deep a couple of times when they had single coverage. It was like safe, deep throws. He didn't throw, like the air yards were very short. He wasn't throwing it downfield much. But outside of the first couple of throws, he was accurate. He got it where it needed to be. I thought he played a really good game, to the point where they had to use Reese as a spy. Carson Beck at one point because they were worried he's going to run for a third down.
Well, I was watching again. I was watching this with my brother-in-law, and we were watching the second half. I was like, if Ohio State's going to win this game, they're going to need the big mistake from Carson Beck, and he never did it. That's kind of that's like the kicker with Carson Beck, because when he's good, he's really good, and I think we saw flashes in this game of possible future number 1 pick Carson Beck from like 2 years ago.
I don't think we saw that.
We saw little flashes of it.
I don't think we saw that at all, but we
really
didn't
bad
need to.
tape on, and then obviously like the big mistake is like looming, and it never came out against Miami, because I think if it did come out, I think they lose that game. But credit to him, he played really well in that game and did enough certainly for Miami to win.
Miami defense, 5 sacks. Not only 5 sacks, those 5 sacks were for 42 yards of sacks. Every single one of them, it felt like blew up a drive. And that was the problem with Ohio State. They would always allow a sack and then suddenly be in like 2nd and 17. And it's really hard to do stuff with that. So like they were very impactful big plays, and when they didn't, they were getting a lot of pressure. Ruben Bain was blowing dudes up. Every time Miami went with a stunt, Ohio State's offensive line looked like it had no idea what to do. And I thought Sayin finishes 22 for 35, 287 yards, 8 yards per throw, but a touchdown, but 2 interceptions. But some of that yardage is inflated by a couple of big passes, one of them to Jeremiah Smith, who had 7 catches, 157 and a touchdown. Down to down, it wasn't really there. It was a lot of dump offs to tight ends and running backs. That ultimately what was working. But Sayin didn't have very much time to do things. And when he did get some time, his head was coming down. He was worried about the pressure that was coming. And I think we saw the limitations we said going into this game. You and I both said it. The 2 like good defenses that Ohio State played. Texas, you scored 14 points. Indiana, you scored 10. Like, we had not seen this offense really light it up against a great team, and they couldn't here. It wasn't here. And whether that was Ryan Day calling the plays or whatever, like, they never quite had it. Carnell Tate was probably hurt. He didn't look 100%. But, like, you had Jeremiah Smith and couldn't get anything going in any of the big games.
I really haven't understood this. We haven't talked about this much this year. But for all the talent that Ohio State has, especially on offense, it seems like they've played below that talent level all season long. You know, you talk about the explosiveness, you talk about looking just really scary. Their backs are not great, but they have above average backs. And then you have the best player in college football. You have a quarterback I'm told is a Heisman candidate. He wasn't on my ballot, but I'm told
top 4. He was a finalist.
Yeah, I'm told he's very good. And you just never really looked at them and you're like, oh, this is a scary offense. It's just never felt like that. And I don't know how that's possible when you consider all the talent that they have. And then certainly when you can't block, Messidor and Bain, that's a problem. And Bain, I think has probably made as much money for himself as anybody in the playoff this year. Just going from a guy that was probably a top 20 pick to maybe a top 5 pick. And he just has been unblockable for 2 games against 2 pretty good offensive lines.
Yeah, there was a play in the first quarter, I think, when he was getting blocked, but he like fought through it to get a TFL like on a running back. It was just like, whoa,
He's
this
sick.
is like a different kind of dude.
And also maybe it's the facial hair, but he does just look 35. It's really like Aaron Donald. I feel like looks younger than Ruben Bain.
Yeah, like you wondered if the Miami front was going to wear down because they're not as deep as some other teams. And they pulled them out kind of like late in the first half there as well. But ultimately, like Miami held the ball here for way longer. Miami held the ball for 33 minutes. Even more at certain points, like they were able to keep that defense rested. There was, I think, 1 3 and out, I think, and it might have been the first drive of the game. And so it's not like that defense was like Texas Tech had to keep going back out there over and over and over. No, like Miami, even when they weren't scoring, they were running some clock. They were getting a couple of first downs, and that stuff matters because it matters for field position. It matters for resting your defense. That's why all those first downs matter. I mean, Miami went 7 for 14 on third down plus a fourth down pickup. So really 8 for 14. That kept things moving. That kept the ball out of Ohio State's hands. And so this Miami team, like I covered the SMU game when they lost here in Dallas. And I wrote after that game, I said, you don't have to have seen a second of this game, but if I told you Miami lost to SMU, you would know exactly how it happened. It would have happened with penalties, Carson Beck turnovers, and questionable game management for Mario Cristobal. That's how they lose all of their games. At that point, Cristobal had dropped to 4-9 as the head coach at Miami in November. And he said after the game that the day after that loss to SMU, he called a staff meeting. And instead of like yelling at everybody and getting on people and pounding the table, he went in the opposite direction. And he said, we need to be positive with our guys. We need to lift them up. We need to be their biggest fans because that's what they need right now because nobody else believes in them because everybody had written them off for the playoff essentially at that point, especially when the rankings came out. And Miami's been a completely different team since then.
Mm-hmm.
Like they rolled through the final 4 games there, destroyed Pitt on the road. You go to Texas A&M and win. Now you beat the defending national champions in Ohio State. Like this is the Miami team we saw at the beginning of the year when we said this might be the most complete team in the country. He got them back to their elite level. And so Cristobal takes a lot of heat for various things, clock management or whatever. Does he get the most out of his guys? It's, some untimely, some bad losses. Hasn't won the ACC. He deserves a lot of credit for what he has done in the back half of the season.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think, man, that team that we saw in the first month of the season kind of disappearing at midseason. The Louisville loss is kind of like, I mean, what was it, 5 picks? It's kind of like,
yeah,
whatever.
that was a weird.
It is what it is. But SMU, there were a lot of red flags in that game. But this team sort of reappearing late in the season, I don't know how you credit that to anything but coaching. It's a bad comparison, but like Ohio State sort of figuring some stuff out after the Michigan game and realizing, hey, our best path to victory is bomb it to all of our insane receivers, make people cover us because they can't. And I think, Miami, it's just like, hey, let's go beat people up front. Let's rush the pass. Let's get there with 4. Let's put Mark Fletcher, who's finally healthy. Let's ram him down their throat. Let's not ask Carson Beck to be Superman. That's what they were the first month of the season. And now they're back, and they look a lot like that team. And I think you have to credit that coaching. And so, yeah, listen, we can nitpick some of the in-game stuff all we want, but like when in terms of having the pulse of your team and running your team and getting them to play their best football when it's the most meaningful football, I mean, that was I'm trying to think. That's probably an A. That's an A. Is that an A+ from Miami? Like, is there a version
to beat
Miami
Ohio State, to beat the defending national champion?
I mean,
yeah,
Chris.
yeah.
Okay.
To be maybe
this
to
is
be
not a
maybe to be
this
the
is not a
team to be the
results-based podcast, Chris. We are a process-based podcast. I think
that's a team with
there is another gear that they can get to still, and I think
Miami.
it's for them to get to where they but I think to
Oh,
where they're
okay. I
at
get what you're
now,
saying.
just how they play,
I
just
don't
their
know.
performance. I don't think that's an A+ performance, which again I
Okay.
think it speaks to the potential of this team.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're ever going to get the Carson Beck. You ride Carson Beck to victory type of thing. It's got to be complementary pieces. But
Yeah,
it's
probably.
I give an A+ for winning that game. I guess.
Well,
Is
sure,
what
A+
I would say.
for the result, but in terms of their performance, I wouldn't call that like an A+ performance. It was like solid.
Yeah, I would say it was like an A. And you know what I realized? I've covered 4 college football playoff games the last 2 years. I've seen, I think, 5 defensive touchdowns. There were 2 pick sixes by Penn State against SMU. There was the Jack Sawyer fumble return against Texas.
That's
Then this
wild.
year there was the Alabama pick 6, and now we have the Keontae Scott Miami pick 6. So whenever I go to a playoff game, apparently we're getting defensive score.
Well, whenever I go to a playoff game, somebody gets smacked. So
that's how it was for me for a number of years. And actually, when I was talking with people in the press box before Miami Ohio State, I was like, I just want a good game. I'm so often at
the
big
last
games
great
that
playoff game I covered was the Michael Penix Sugar Bowl, which was like unbelievable. That's the single best individual quarterback performance I've ever seen in person in my life.
So being there at the game, Michael Irvin is there. Ray Lewis is there in a nice suit. Warren Sapp, I believe, was there in a suite.
Chris, be careful. Just be careful.
Jimmy Johnson was there. Cool to see him.
Yeah.
And it was like a star, like walking on the sideline before the game. I was like, this is a pretty star-studded event. And then the games, they keep showing Michael Irvin on the screen during the game. And I know I didn't see the full broadcast. But there was a moment like late in the game when Miami's up, has the ball. It's like a 3rd or 4th down. And they cut to Michael Irvin and Ray Lewis. Both of them, legs spread out wide, arms on their knees, leaned over, heads down. They're just like going through it. They're just like stressed out of this moment. And I think like I said, if the A&M game, like everybody has watched a game in that position before, and we can respect it. And after the game, we go look for Michael Irvin because he's going to say something. And like he gives Carson Beck a big hug, and he starts kind of going off about how people were disrespecting Carson Beck and we believe in him and all this stuff. It's like really like kind of like nice. And then someone asked him like, Mike, what do you think about all the doubters or the people who said how long it's been since Miami has been here? And he says, I don't want that story bringing down my glory. And he has another.
We can get him and Dion together, man.
He had another line that rhymed that was good. And he's all these other teams that doubted us, they're taking their ass home. It was just like kind of wild to see up close in person as much as you see. Now I will say he is leaning into this a lot. And I'm
okay with it. I'm still all in on the Michael Irvin experience.
He's got like a guy with him or something. He's mic'd up. And someone's posting all these things he's doing. He's very much in this for the content. He posts a bunch of videos that has his name on there. He's pulling off the belt and lifting his abs because he's doing the belt to ass type of thing. He's very much leaning into the character. But I think everybody who kind of just knows Michael Irvin knows that's also just who he is.
Yeah. I mean, we saw this last year. Here's a question for you, Chris. We've bemoaned a little bit of this as the transfer portal era has revved up into high gear. I'm concerned that like the old heads who are synonymous with a university, like Michael Irvin, Warren Sapp, like these are Miami people, Ed Reed. These are synonymous with that program. Do you have any concerns about in 20 years that just is not going to exist anymore? Like, I think there are so many players who you see them and you think that, like Vince Young, that is Texas. Colt McCoy, that is Texas. Michael Irvin, that is Miami. I do have some concern about this.
There will be less of it. I mean, if you're
Mhm.
Fernando Mendoza, like, how do Cal fans feel about him?
Yeah, I don't
Like,
know. I've wondered that because we haven't heard much. I mean, I don't have any Cal fans in my life, and they're not that necessarily like ever present online. With apologies to the Cal algorithm, I do wonder what Cal fan. I feel like that was a pretty like you got you got your degree. I think he played. He was a starter 2 years there, if I'm not mistaken. I think that was about as ceremonious as an exit as we've seen in the portal. But I do wonder, like, how Cal fans have felt about the
yeah.
Fernando.
I mean,
Maybe he's
like,
just too lovable to have any hard feelings.
there will be guys who stay at a school and do big things, and you'll just have fewer of them. It's like, I mean, like look at Joe Burrow, man. Like,
Yeah, it's
he's
true.
LSU, but he was at Ohio State first, and he didn't play at Ohio State, so it wasn't as comparable. But like,
Mhm.
I think it's if you're at a place and you win, and even if it's 1 year, if it's 2 years, like you become a legend there, and I think that might be enough. But for the teams that don't win it all, for the guys who transfer to 3 schools and don't accomplish so much, like what coach do you call when you need something? Like we went to
Mhm.
AFCA last year, and I think it was Jay Norvell brought this up or Jason Neck,
Mhm.
one of the two. Both
It
of
was
them
on
were
their
there.
panel. I don't remember which coach said it. I remember
Yeah,
them
and
saying
they
it
were
though.
like, I'm here because when I was done playing, I needed something, and my former coach helped me out. And you're gonna have a lot of guys who didn't kind of network and create those relationships in football. And so
Mhm.
I do think that's a concern. We're kind of off
I
track
will
here,
say
but
it's nice that Trinidad Chambliss has 2 cities now in America where he never has to pay for a drink the rest of his life.
do you know where Ferris State is, by the way?
It's somewhere in Michigan. Is it a Ferris, Michigan?
No, it's in Big Rapids.
Too
Not quite
many
Grand
rapids
Rapids.
in Michigan. We
A lot of
gotta
rapids.
can we
They're
can we
actually
have the state of Michigan trim down the number of rapids? I
he's
question
from
how many actual rapids there are even in the state.
he's from Grand Rapids, but there actually are not rapids in there anymore. Those have been gone since like the 1800s. So back to Miami here. Like, they're the first double-digit seed to win a playoff game, and they've done it twice.
Well,
They were like a
double digit
9
seed. We're gonna
they
we're
were
gonna
like
put that in quotes.
well, no, they were the last team in the field.
I know, but like that, we're not gonna do the Cinderella Miami thing. They're one of the most talented teams in the country.
They were a 10-point underdog against Ohio State. Like, and they would have been similar probably against Georgia. So I think if you're Miami, like, the formula to success. It's take
Mhm.
care of the ball, run it pretty well with Fletcher, and
Yeah.
force defensive havoc. Like that is very much there. So, all right, let's talk about briefly. We'll do a big preview going into the semifinals, but semifinal early thoughts. We have Miami versus Ole Miss in the Fiesta Bowl, and we have Indiana, Oregon rematch in the Peach Bowl. Let's go Peach Bowl first. Indiana, Oregon.
Okay, I will be at the Peach
By the way,
Bowl. I'm very excited about this.
Indiana's like a 3 or 4 point favorite.
Yeah. I have seen Oregon play in person, like, weirdly, like 6 times, I think. I have never seen Indiana play football in person, but I'll be at this game. I take that back. I covered the Gator Bowl in 2019, so excuse me, I did. That was Kalen DeBoer, if I'm not mistaken, OC under Tom Allen.
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway, I think it's an interesting game between these two teams, like storyline wise. I think it lacks a little bit, but I do think this is going to be a question of can Oregon neutralize some of the physicality, because Oregon is more physical under Dan Lanning, but I don't think they're quite to that level of Indiana. Indiana already obviously beat this team in Eugene. So to me, if they can match that physicality and turn this into a coin flip game, then I think they have more dynamic players on the outside. I like their receivers more if they can get healthy. I think Dante Moore can maybe be a little bit more dynamic than Fernando Mendoza and use his legs a little bit more. But you're going to have to neutralize the physicality. You're going to have to match Indiana in the trenches, which, as Alabama found out today, is hard.
Yeah, that's what I want to see. Like, can Oregon get pressure? Like, Oregon is the number 2 rushing offense in the country. Like, they couldn't run the ball really well against Tech, but this is a team that has typically run the ball well. They ran the ball at Iowa. Can they run the ball? Or if they don't, if it's all on Dante Moore again, that puts you in a really bad spot. And then typically, again, on the other side of the line, can Oregon get pressure on Fernando Mendoza without having to blitz too much? Like, And you're going to have to get the turnovers. You got 4 turnovers
Yeah.
here against Texas Tech. Again, Indiana's number 1 in the country in turnover margin. You're going to need a couple of those, I think, to go your way. Indiana's win at Oregon is kind of the win that legitimized them, I think. That was the first, like,
Yeah.
whoa, okay, this isn't just a schedule merchant team. And I think they're pretty confident. But I will say this, by the way, rematches in the playoff era, I believe, there has only been one team that won both games, and that was Ole Miss against Tulane. Because Ole Miss, Georgia split it this year. Alabama, Georgia championship split it. Ohio State, Oregon last year split it. It's beating a team twice in a year is very, very difficult. And I like maybe it's heat of the moment here, but like Indiana looked unstoppable today. And that Indiana team could wreak havoc on anybody. But Dan Lanley's a good coach, so we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
The other one, Miami, Ole Miss. Miami, I think it's like a 3-ish point favorite. That actually kind of surprised me.
I haven't seen that. These two teams have not played since
have
1951, by the way, 3 times ever,
correct.
and Ole Miss has never been to the Fiesta Bowl.
I'd pre-written at halftime Miami Georgia preview because we had to get it ready to go the second the game ended. Then as the second half is going on, I had to redo it and get Ole Miss in there. So I found some of those stats. So not much history there. I don't know what to expect from these teams, man. Like,
yeah, I don't either.
Can I thought Georgia was actually able to run the ball like okay at times in this game before Nate Frazier got hurt. Can Mark Fletcher get those big runs, or is Ole Miss defense going to swarm like it did and neutralize that? Trinidad Chambliss probably going to be on the run a lot against that Miami front.
He's comfortable there, though.
I could really see both these games going either way. I have no idea what to expect from that game right now.
I mean, I think I like Indiana solidly over Oregon. I'm still very skeptical of Oregon. But on the other side, I think I trust Ole Miss a little bit more, but Miami has a higher ceiling. So that's a game I think could go either way. But I would be surprised to see Oregon win this game. I got to tell you.
You might have you're probably going to have perhaps the top 2 quarterbacks in the next draft in Mendoza and Dante Moore. Like both of them, probably. I think, can come back, but it seems more likely Mendoza's definitely gone. Dante Moore, it seems like it's on the fence, but this is going to be an incredible quarterback matchup too. Yeah. There's a chance we really get something cool out of that. Those games with the 8th and the 9th, is it? I think the Fiesta Bowl is the first one on the 8th. When's the Peach Bowl you're going to?
It's the 9th. It's the night of the 9th, yeah.
So
I gotta get up to
yeah.
Chris, you know what my overwhelming thought over this weekend is probably a good place to close before we remember some guys briefly. 12-team playoff is awesome. We knew the event was gonna be awesome, and like tweaking the buys, I think helped, gave us some matchups people were looking forward to. That delivered in different ways, even though Oregon and Indiana, sort of sapped a lot of the drama out of it. But the event is awesome. It has enhanced the regular season experience for me. We haven't seen it undercut rivalry week. I don't care about championship weekend. It has kind of killed championship weekend. I don't particularly care about that. But I think it's been a massive net positive for the sport. And I love the first round weekend. This was even better. I was very excited about every single game. I was into it, every game.
How much of that is just the high we're having coming off Ole Miss Georgia? Because most of this day was 2 blowout games, and all of us yelling on Twitter about. But
it was compelling though. The Oregon game was the least compelling, but watching Alabama get their face rubbed in the dirt was compelling. It was wow. Oh my gosh.
It made me go back to what I always say, which is there's a lot of blowouts in the playoff. You cannot engineer competitive college football games because you don't know what's going to happen. The BCS National Championship game had a ton of blowouts. The 14 playoff had a ton of blowouts. The 12 team has a ton of blowouts. You can't expand this to 16 and thinking it's going to get you more games. It's not. In fact, the way this playoff has turned out has only furthered my belief that we don't need to expand anymore. We don't need, like, should Notre Dame have been in over somebody? Like, maybe. But think about last year's Alabama team, that 9-3 team. Do we really need that team into the field? Do we really need BYU this year with 2 blowout losses to Texas Tech in the field? Like, no, we've got enough teams. And the more you expand, the more it devalues the regular season. And all these blowouts and everything with the way the playoff has gone is a reminder, like, I'm enjoying most of this playoff, but you can't make the playoff the whole thing. Because if you just keep tweaking and expanding and doing this stuff, it's not going to create more good games because the sport doesn't work that way. And it's going to devalue the regular season and rivalries and things that get to that point. And as we head into this final weekend of the NFL season, that last weekend of the NFL sucked. There were like 2 or 3 good games. Every team you're wondering, are they benching guys to try to tank for a better draft pick? And now this upcoming week of NFL football sucks. And college football cannot get to a point where you wonder if college teams might bench guys at the end, the last week of the regular season, because they want to prepare for the playoff. You can't, whether it's driving to get to 6-6 or ending the regular season on rivalry games. College football still has these things in the regular season that really matter. And you have to do whatever you can to keep that. And that means not making further tweaks to the playoff just so you can get maybe 1 or 2 more games that might be competitive. It's not worth it. You have to protect the regular season. You have to protect the group of 5 getting a bid, because it's the journey there that makes it worth it. And if we can get a couple of good games out of the playoff like we did in the quarterfinals, we got 2 good games, 2 not good games. That's just like, that's just how it is. And so, as you know, the commissioner was going to meet for the title game to talk about expansion again. And I'm like, I've yet to hear a reason we need expansion. Like,
I'm with you.
There just isn't.
Well, everyone wants more money. Chris, before we remember some guys, can I leave us with one other parting thought?
Yes.
A couple of years ago, I argued with our good friend, former colleague, Ari Wasserman.
I sat next to him at the Cotton Bowl
for like an entire year about the idea that it was ridiculous that Ohio State would trade a win over Michigan for a national championship, or that beating Michigan and flaming out in the playoff would be better than losing to Michigan and winning the national championship. Both of those scenarios seemed unlikely, and yet Ohio State has lived this out the last 2 years. I would just like to say, I told you so. All you people who said we'd like to beat Michigan and lose in the playoff, no, you wouldn't. Last year was way more satisfying for you Ohio State fans. I don't want to hear it. Told you so.
I think that might also kind of illustrate the problem, but I don't know. Like, I watched that.
We're not going to go down that path. You're probably right, but all I'm saying is I was told I was an idiot for suggesting that anyone who thought that was not thinking correctly. And now that you've actually experienced both of them, I think any Ohio State fan in their right mind would take last season over this season. Anyway,
it's been a fun enough playoff. We got great stories going into the semifinals. All 4 of these teams can win it all. I don't know what's going to happen, and I love that feeling. It's great. Nice. It's nice to come out of this round. Thank you to Ole Miss and Georgia for salvaging it, because if we had another blowout, the discourse would have been unbearable. So thank you to them for making that happen.
Incredible football game.
By the way, we got more than 4,000 people in here still. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to the podcast either on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. We're going to keep going through this in the off season. We've been having a lot of fun doing this. Please like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. And we will end this episode the way we always do, and that is by remembering some guys.
It's better than this. Guys being dudes.
And I'm going to go with former Ohio State running back Maurice Clarett, who I talked to at Media Day earlier this week.
Interesting life journey for him.
Very much so. He has been around Ohio State the last couple of years. Like he kind of travels with them for big games.
I think I knew that. Mm-hmm.
And I asked him about the 2002 Ohio State Miami game and memories and all that kind of stuff. And he said it hit him on the flight down that the only people there with Ohio State who were also there in 2003 were him and the trainer who's been there for decades. That's it. And he's like, none of these kids were even born when I played. So that was a nice reminder that we are getting old, David. Rewatching that Keith Jackson intro to that game, by the way, was special.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. And there's one other current guy I'd like to remember. That is Caleb Blaha, quarterback for Division III Wisconsin River Falls. They will play for the D3 National Championship on Sunday night, I believe. River Falls, unbelievable story. I have a story on The Athletic coming out on Friday about them. They had 20 straight losing seasons until 2021 when they promote their 26-year-old receivers coach to OC, and they want to run the fastest offense they've ever seen. They turned the season around, turned the program around, made the playoffs this year for the first time since 1996. All the way in the national championship game where they'll play North Central, who is the current D3 dynasty. Should be a good game there in the Stag Bowl. Caleb Blaha, best player in Division III. Two of the really good offenses here. Should be a fun game. So there's that. I think
that's not really remembering some guys, Chris. That's just acknowledging some guys.
Well, I wanted to acknowledge it because we got some comments about people who want us to talk about the FCS National Championship game. That is Monday night, Illinois State, Montana State. I think we're going to do a show on Monday, so I'll just save that for then. But Wisconsin River Falls was playing before then, so had to shout them.
Yeah. All right. I am going to go with the maybe the only other really fun Indiana quarterback, Nate Sudfeld. He played like a decade ago, the Hoosiers. He made me believe that it was possible to enjoy watching Indiana football, which, outside of a couple of Antoine Randall runs, we hadn't seen a whole lot of that. But 48 touchdowns, 16 picks in his 2 seasons as starter, sandwiched around an injury-shortened season. Sure, being fun. And I was like, hey, Nate Sudfeld, good football. So, Nate Sudfeld, we remember you.
Although I do think Indiana's had some fun quarterbacks. Michael Penix was there.
Well, but this was before that. That's my point, though. It was the first time in my life I remember
Kellen
watching
Lewis.
Indiana. I don't remember him. Yeah. But it was the first time in my life I remember watching Indiana football and being like, I'm enjoying this experience. So I imagine some Indiana football fans have experienced the same thing.
We appreciate everybody staying up late with us. Love college football, man. There's no sport like it. Even when we end the Sugar Bowl with the weirdest taking the stage off the field because we got a safety on a.
I will say there was like a couple minutes there when Lawson Lucky is like throwing, the Frank Wycheck Music City Miracle, where I was like, surely not.
There was a moment I was like,
surely not.
And then it gets back, to Gunnar Stockton, and it looks like he's about to chuck it deep, and I'm like, oh, what is going on here? And he gets hit one last time. He took a beating. Tough player, not good enough. Congratulations to Miami, to Indiana, to Oregon, to Ole Miss. Welcome to the new world of college football, folks. Anything's possible. Your team's got a chance. That's a lot of fun. I can't wait for these semifinals. For David Ubben, I'm Chris Vannini. Thank you for listening and watching to Bunch Formation. And we will talk to you next week.
And especially if you're in the semifinals, bring back the turnover chain. Thanks for sticking with us in the car tonight.